I think we'd make the hood do a event application. Am I
Oh, yeah,
correct?
yeah, they have to have lighting.
Because again, it comes down to public safety, and emergency services.
So when the part of the public or the special event application, this is why the chief of police is included. He has to sign off on it before it's approved. So this applies for any street closure, whether it's construction, a special event, whatever, but it is not specific to a route. It's just specific to closures, any closure for any reason at any point.
Thank you.
Any questions, commissioners, before we move to public comment? Warren?
Yeah, but before comments, if I'm understanding this correctly, the city commission has absolutely no voice in voting for or against or changing in any way the decision that's been made.
Yes, please, sorry.
So according to the ordinance, the final authority is the chief of police.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay. So with public comment, there will be a time limit as usual. Please also recognize that it could be hours. So repeating the same thing over and over again, even though we want to hear your thoughts and your stance, but repeating the same thing is not necessarily going to make for a short meeting, or it could impact our meeting, and it becomes just excessive in the sense of repeating. Just keeping that as something in the back of your minds, as well as don't forget to always state your name and your address and sign in when you come up. Did I miss anything else?
Leslie Feigl, CEO for the Livingston Chamber, CVB, and the TBID. My question is, you guys are starting the clock right now. I turned in the request to the city commission to talk about the parade route, but I'm not on the discussion today. I'm having to do public comment again for 4 minutes. So I'm going to talk really quick because I don't understand when I turn in an application to the city manager, I'm not on the agenda. Does that make sense? It doesn't to me. So there is so much to say in 4 minutes. First of all, I want to say thank you to the commission for hearing me this evening and to hearing all the lovely people in the room. First of all, I'm extremely disappointed, and I do get to say that to Police Chief Dale Johnson and the Fire Chief, Rural Fire Chief Lisa Shannon, and to the group. Since I came to this to the Chamber of Commerce for over 6 years now, I sit on the LEPC with these folks. We have a good relationship, a working relationship. There's been many opportunities to talk about safety for the community. I myself, as access and functional needs lead for the city of Livingston, I take it very personal when somebody wants to get up here and not discuss with me about how I feel about the safety of our citizens in the city of Livingston. Very personal. First of all, let's go through this really quickly. 93 years, oldest continuous 4th of July parade in the state of Montana. The statewide recognition all the way to the governor's office, which I have a letter here from the governor, which I forward to you, the city commission, that we just received a grant from the governor. Both Mr. Cooney, the lieutenant governor, and the governor have been in the parade, and they love this community. I today spent with many people from the state of Montana, and they are all shocked to hear what is happening to our historic parade. The value of our historic parade goes back for generations, way before any of us were here, any of you were here, and way before Mike was here, Mr. Cardus, excuse me. I want to try to do this without being too incredibly passionate in 1 minute and 47 seconds. When it comes to the insurance, if you look at the policy under the city for the street and alley closure, it's right there. It's number 4. We provide a $4 million policy. We upped it over $2 million last year, and we take sole responsibility over the city, which actually covers us. covers the street. It covers the closure. It's a release, held harmless, I believe, I guess is the correct terms for this, for the city, for that one block on Park Street. I have Kyle DeMars's boss that actually signed the waiver to close through MDT to close that one block of Park Street, as well as the only thing that MDT does not supply any longer are the barriers, and that was because some previous lawsuit that they faced with the state. It's not that they don't believe in closing it, it's about that they don't supply the little barrier. We every year have had the tow truck companies in the community park their tow trucks on both sides as they detour to help with the detour going around town. Having the detours, also the 200 to 300 people that come across Park Street, those detours make those 200 to 300 people safer, and the people that park on Front Street to walk over to the parade. I have a very long list, and this, I just find it incredible that when I turn in the application, I have less than 23 seconds left to talk to you. The insurance is there. The parade routes are all covered. We've never had an incident that has been brought to my attention. By the way, the state certified flaggers, Ken with Whistler's Towing, all of their drivers are state certified annually and pass a class to be flaggers for insurance policy purposes, to be able to close any of these closures that we need here in the city.
Thank you, Leslie. Leslie,
Yes.
I can't give you more out of fairness to others. Let's
Can I use her 4 minutes?
let's talk about.
I can answer
I'm trying to
questions.
think of how you can have your voice and where it can be heard more technically, just through following procedures and
Absolutely. I have all the procedures here for you.
can we open it to other people and give everyone their 4 minutes that wants it?
And then have me
And
come
then
back up to answer questions.
Let me think on it. Okay,
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
thank
I'm
you.
the president of the chamber board, and I yield my time to Leslie.
I know, everyone will.
So
I appreciate that. Can
criticism
we give it
Leslie.
public comment to multiple people?
let her talk. I'm giving her my 4 minutes.
I will be less passionate if you let me continue with actually the items in the book.
Commissioners, I guess I will also leave that to us as a group, because it is breaking procedure and what we've done to fairly give the community a voice. How are you comfortable? Please stop talking from the public or you have to go. Thank you. Would you like, what would you like as well? I wanted to just try to give other people their voice as well, and then to try work towards a solution on it.
May I ask you if you allow me to come back up and continue by using their minutes after we allow our representatives of the community to talk?
Commissioners, give me some feedback on what we just discussed.
Any thoughts, Jay? Just out of procedure, does it?
Warren?
I would say that anyone who basically is in favor of changing the route, I think that they should come up next. And I believe that since Leslie is basically the expert on the parade route, I think that anyone who wants to give her their time should be allowed to.
Okay, what do you guys think? Melissa, Mel? Quinn?
In my
Leslie?
experience, there's a lot of ways to handle public comment.
Mhm.
I think it's really important to hear. We have a nice group of people here, and I want to hear from lots of people. I think there's a lot of ways you can do that. I think you suggested one where you give 4 minutes to each person, and then based on whatever time it is, then people can go through again if they're not finished. That's one option. I think it's super generous that people want to give their time to
Mhm.
Leslie. But I also want to hear from other people too, in addition to Leslie. And I think I think that Leslie also respects our time and would I think that she would use extra time wisely and not just try to keep us here until midnight. So, I mean, I think,
That's
She-
what we're attempting to
yeah.
do. Have everybody heard?
yeah, I mean, you do this often, you know, the importance of efficiency. So I'm fine with either way, but I don't want people to feel like they have to give up their time for someone else. I
No,
want everyone to
no.
be able to have some time. So I think that the proposal of her talking more now or her coming back at the end, as long as everybody gets a chance, I think that it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Either way works for me.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. What do you think? Anything else? And my only always concern is opening up the can of worms for procedure and fairness in the future, not just tonight.
Yes.
And so that,
I have more to tell you on that. So I would appreciate being able to come back and address some of the issues and questions that you have as the commission
Do
that
you-
you asked the staff.
Leslie, and could you finish your synopsis for us and then maybe move come back
Yes.
and give, after you give other public that time as well, or we give? And then, so finish your synopsis so then we can move on to public comment, and then please give your public comment then whenever you want back into the mix. How about that?
Yes. Thank you very
So
much.
respecting what everyone's really wanting.
Yes, thank you. First of all, Chair, I would like to hand you the signatures.
Here's the ones from before.
Yes, that was 599. There's 55 more, and then there's 1,384 online petition signatures from your community in Kingston and Park County, and actually some of those beyond into the state. What I wanted to talk about briefly was that we can't afford to reduce our historic community opportunities that create a solid base income because we no longer have that community to visit or have as a vacation. If no one thinks anything special happens here, we're viewed as an incredible historic Western Montana experience that can't be missed, or we are marketed now that we are finally marketed worldwide. And what I mean by that is if we start to reduce something that is historic, like our incredible parade route, that is the biggest parade in the state, and you have to understand that people all over the state, around the country that have visited here, people from all over the world that come here for their vacations just for the 3 days so they could hit the parade and go to the rodeo. This is something that you don't mess with. This is something that creates an income from our local economy that if we start to reduce, we're going to start to, if we allow things like this to be reduced, we're going to start to reduce what we are as a community of tourism. We were created on tourism, and we can't reduce that. And I understand the city manager doesn't understand tourism. We have continued to work with them for the last couple of years. And I can't sit down with folks to look at a future plan to create a route that would work better if they don't return your calls, if they don't answer your emails. There's no way to fix that. I am afraid that in the importance of tourism and it's willing to sacrifice our history for its new community vision is going to be a hindrance for our community. I have an insurance policy that was submitted to MDT. It was approved by them. It was given to the city. The insurance policy was not brought up by the city staff. The application is turned in with that every year. We actually upped the policy this year. So it's 100% adequate, if not more, to cover that one block. As you say, one city block, it's not one city block. It's actually 3 blocks of a parade route. And that's the important part of understanding this, that actually shortening the parade is what happened last year. And last year was only because of the construction on Main Street. We supply the detour routes. We have over 44 people that are just standing at each one of the closures to allow access and emergency assistance if needed. We have walkers. Last year we had 12 of them that walked along the parade route and made sure the kids stayed behind the line. Oh yeah, a couple of years ago when the chair incidents, because the wind blew everybody's chair over, when people showed up and their chairs were all moved and people got upset, we actually got rid of that. We took the city ordinance, which says you can't allow to put anything on the streets before 6 a.m. You can't tie them together to in here to keep people out of getting into the business throughout the business day. And we go out at 6 a.m. and we chalk the streets. We still call it, Candy Gate. You can't throw candy from the center of the route. You have to walk down the chalk lines. It has made the route incredibly safe for all of the children in our community and the children that visit here. And we keep them out from underneath the horses. The horses are now coming back. The Crow Nation is sending 2 chiefs this year via horseback for the first time. And can you all remember the last time they were in the parade? They're coming back because this parade is that special. And I just get goosebumps every time I talk about it. It's an incredible thing to have them back here. They were here when this community started, and now they're coming back. They're working with us because tourism and business is important to their communities as well as ours. Dan Babcock's rural fire chief, he is not only does he allow all of his gentlemen and ladies now to be in their trucks, to be in the parade, which the community appreciates. They wave from the trucks. Some of them throw candy. They shoot off water from the fire trucks. And, it's a great thing. This community likes to see and appreciates our emergency services. And the fire trucks being in the parade is a very important part of that. He actually parks on the other side of the parade route so that he could be first to access it. And again, we have volunteers at each of those closures should they need to move it out of the way, and an access needs to be made immediately so that the trucks can catch up. And he took that initiative, and I appreciate that his department took that initiative. I appeal to the city commission to listen to this one last part, which was I was told to submit a different route, and I had about 48 hours by 5 p.m. to submit something. You have to understand the route length has to be in accordance to how many people come into the parade to not only watch it, to be in it as well. You have to start somewhere, they have to go through a route, and they have to end where their trucks are, where their horse trailers are, and everything else. It's all logistics, which it takes about a year to figure this out. And the only reason why we chose Yellowstone Street is so that we wouldn't lose the parade, period. We were told they denied it. I have the email that says that it was denied, and it's hard for me to understand. And I really adore this person, but somebody who doesn't even attend the parade should not be allowed to have such power over a parade when they simply don't attend it. I'm going to yield to the rest of the people in the room. I appreciate your time and allowing me to continue and talk further. And if you have questions, please, I will come up after. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Leslie.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Phil Chiavello. I'm the President and Chair of the Livingston Chamber Board. I live at 3838 89 South. A couple of things, but before I start, I wanted to ask the room, how many here want to see the parade on Park Street? Raise your hand. I heard a couple of things tonight that I want to understand better. I heard about liability. I've been practicing law for 35 years. I know a thing about two about liability. It's a function of insurance. No one's talked about the increase in cost to the city for this added liability. You should know that. You should find that out and understand it and see if that's a real factor. Typically, it's not. Typically, an insurance carrier will add on something to an existing policy to cover a special event, and it's usually very reasonable. The second thing is, I heard comments about emergency access down Park Street, and with a parade, you could have stalled vehicles or vehicles backing up. How's that any different from any other day when Park Street's being used as an alternative route when they shut down 89? On those windy days when the trucks have to come down Park Street. That can happen almost any day of the year. So I think it's a red herring to say that the parade is creating an added risk that the blocking of Park Street is an added risk. That can happen any day. Then on the comments about the police response incidents, I was impressed. It sounded to me like about 3 or 4 incidents a year during the parade. When you have 10,000 or more people, 3 or 4 incidents with a population of over 10,000 people, that's got to be a record. We should be proud of that. That doesn't sound like the kind of thing that creates added risk. That sounds like a very well-behaved, well-mannered, well-conducted community. So again, these are, I'm hearing a lot of issues about risk and public safety that if you drill down and dig deep, I think you'll see that they're really not issues that are any different than what Livingston faces on any other day, and that we're managing them as a community very well. So I urge you to consider your constituency, which is also the Chamber's constituency, and permit the parade route down Park Street and accommodate the citizens of Livingston and the over almost 2,000 signatures that you have on a petition here. I don't think, when was the last time you saw 2,000 signatures on a petition? Thank you.
Patricia Grabo, 204 East Calendar Street. First, I want to say that I am concerned that the letter of May 23rd that went out to the city, all the city commissioners at once, interpreted the law, section 916, without any consideration of section 2635. And I'm going to read that a little slower so you can really hear it, because I was on the commission when that was passed. So I went back and looked at my notes on it. And I will say that I do not believe that the city manager and the city attorney went back and did any research on how this section 2635 was created. Now, 2635 said, is it unlawful any person, including employees or of any person, to unnecessarily obstruct any street or public way by any means whatsoever, except for such necessary purpose and with a permit from the commission. With a permit from the commission. So we are really trying to determine tonight who is in charge. And this says the commission is in charge of permits. And then it says, or the chief of police. And then for only such period of time as can be designated by the permit. Now, if you read 916, it says, it does not say anything about permits. And the reason that 2635 came into being was to deal with parades, to deal with permits. And so it put, instead of putting the police in charge, that isn't apparently the city manager's interpretation of the law, and he's new to town. And he wasn't there when this was passed. It had nothing to do with what he said and the city attorney said. It is to deal with permits. So the city commission has every right to make a decision on this parade. And it says the city commission or the police chief. So it is in your court. The ball is in your court by law. I want to also say that 60 years of a parade, and I want to underscore, without the kind of minor incidents that was outlined by the city police chief, does not warrant a safe parade for 60 years and the kind of planning that's done by the chamber. And and you know how much our current chamber president went through to create a line down the street so the kids wouldn't get candy thrown at them and they'd run in front of those big trucks. Every single caution has been taken on that parade. That is 12,000 people. And I want to say one other thing. Of those 2,000 signatures that you have, those are community leaders. Those are educators. Those are people in nonprofit organizations. There is a universal consent for your decision making on this issue. It is your decision to make this decision on this permit. And I would want you to be wise and kind to this community. The 4 people who spoke tonight are just lovely people, but you know what? 60 years overweighs, and your right to make this decision overweighs all the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
Commission, my name's John Nelson, and I live at 55 Merrill Lane, and my family is a 5th generation Park County. Having a degree in criminal justice, I understand the chief or the chief of police, you have a tough decision to make. No matter what we do, I have to agree with the president of the association. We deal with things every day. There is nothing that I think that any one of us in this room could actually change the minds of the fire chief, the rule, because them are paramount. Safety of people always comes first, but that's in every event. And I happen to agree with Leslie that from my days as a little boy in this community, back in the 60s, this has been a valued tradition. Now, can I honestly tell this commission in front of me that this 1 or 3 blocks is going to really change things? I don't know. But I do know of many, many families and generations that are still here that value the parade route as it is. My mother happens to be an Alzheimer's patient, and she enjoys watching the parade from the depot lawn. She has been doing that for 45 years. There are stories that are limitless. Now, many communities in Colorado, I'm a retired UPS manager. I've sat on many boards as what you guys have done. A lot of communities have just said, we don't want a parade anymore. Look at the people to the west of us in Bozeman. Many of their parades have disappeared because they've grown. If you talk to the Air Force Academy, they gave their last air show at Bozeman. About what, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? The reason why is because Bozeman's growing. The airport's too big. The challenge is how do we keep this long tradition in Livingston and make it successful? What I'm very disappointed at is Leslie's comments directed to the city manager. If we knew that this problem was going to arise a year ago, so my challenge to you, Commission, is that are we going to be doing this again next year, having these discussions and having people upset, having people's feelings hurt, and then most of all, the businesses in town that are trying to figure out how do they make their money for that weekend. I've been told there's $1 million brought into this community. Cost, I think this gentleman was talking about liability. Why aren't we buying more insurance for that weekend? Why aren't we looking at hiring outside people, asking for more volunteers? There's a lot of people like me that volunteer to the community. If we need more people to help detour traffic, let's do it. If we need the volunteers for the sheriff's department, the posse, whatever we got to do, let's do that. I mean, what can we do to make it happen? I've heard every excuse of why it shouldn't happen, and I can't argue with the chief. Could be some real bad safety issues. I cannot argue with the fire department. But what I have not heard from anybody tonight is what can we do to make the parade work on Park Street? Not one. And that's my question. Why not? We've had a year since last year to do this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.
Hello, City Commission. My name is Jackie. I live at 166 Miller Drive. And first of all, I'd like to thank the city police, the city fire, rural fire, everybody for what they do for our community. Considering what has happened over the last 2 years on the topic of the parade, I am frustrated. The chamber agreed that last year the parade route had to be changed for construction, despite one person employed by the city saying that they would like to see the parade stopped completely. Correct, Mr. Dale Johnson? The city and the chamber agreed upon the gray area so that the parties would have a compromise. This year, we would like the original parade route to be put back into use. The Chamber of Commerce represents and advocates for business success in the Livingston area. With the new route, it would be leaving out the businesses on 2nd Street and those 3 blocks on the parade route that were also left out last year. To clarify, the route on 2nd Street to Callender to Main is not an option. It is not wide enough. We had an incident last year where a horse got very hurt. The big bus had to keep backing up and going forward. So it is not an option. All right, first, you speak of safety, and yet you have not mentioned the 300 people that attend the Festival of the Arts at the Depot every single year, every single day of those 3 days. They will be crossing at Park Street when the parade is happening, or the people that walk from Front Street where they can park and go underneath the underpass and come up to Main to cross right there at Park Street during this time period. There's a lot of traffic going back and forth. So how is that not a safety issue? The chamber has 2 go-around routes, as the chief of fire has already discussed, but it's only 3 hours. The chamber also provides 2 people at every closure so that if an emergency should arise, we would make sure that people got out of the way, the barriers removed so that they may get through. Our Park Street closure is provided by Whistler Towing, and I actually called Amy today and she is totally down to help us with that. Last year, the chamber worked with MDT to change the signs on the highway before people got off to say that Park Street is closed so that not a lot of people got off that way, and 700 cars every hour is a little crazy to me, but whatever they say in their study. So if barriers are a problem, we can find that solution like we did with Whistler Towing. The chamber holds a $4 million insurance policy year-round for all of our events that we hold in this community. The chamber is held liable for whatever happens on the parade route. I understand that if something were to happen off the parade route and they were not able to get there in time, then it's a city insurance policy, just like it is every single day. Okay, let's go down to this part because I've got 47 seconds. The parade has been a part of Livingston for almost 100 years. Last year, while I was going around taking pictures, I had the chance to speak to people who had been going their entire lives to this parade. 2 different families sat there on a Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with 5 generations of their families, and many others with 3, 4 generations to witness a tradition. This is a piece of our history, our essence of Livingston that should not waver. This closure of Park Street, again, is 3, maybe 4 hours long. Are you, the commission, the city manager, the chief of police, the chief of fire, really willing to change what this town has been built on for a chance that something might happen? Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to the citizens of Park County.
Thank you.
Don Plattock, 229 South Yellowstone. Yeah, I love that parade. Last year, I was privileged enough to drive the Yellowstone National Park tour bus in it. If anybody wants to take a ride in it, Friday and Saturday evening, 6:30 at the depot, it's a great tour and it helps a great nonprofit in town. So anyways, I'm a little indifferent about the route. I mean, I think that whole business district makes sense. But if it's going to go on to a private, well, I say mostly a private residence street. And I understand Second Street, it does have some private residents on it, but for the most part, the old route is all business. So if this is the first time it's going to be on a primarily residential street, I can already see some problems. And I'll just give you some examples. Last year they had something called Porch Fest. Kind of the same area was blocked off. A couple hundred people showed up. And I was unfortunate enough to be between two porches across the corner. So the shortest distance between 2 points across my property. You can't stop people unless you were to barricade everything up. They're going to go across private property. They feel entitled. I'm here visiting. I do whatever I want to do. Had people setting up chairs. And this is for the Porch Fest. Not on the boulevard, on private property. Can't stay here, private property. So just imagine thousands of people. And it's just a fact that when people go on vacation, they feel entitled. I can do whatever I want to here. So now you've got this entire street full of residences. I have no idea what's going to happen. That night before, there might be people camping out in everybody's yards to put chairs up. And I'm not talking the boulevard. I'm talking on private property. Again, no joke. I had my front door open once. A complete stranger walks in my door, wants to look at my house. I didn't know if I was going to have to get a gun. You know, what's this person doing? So just imagine thousands of people coming into this town on a private residence. What do we do to protect our property? I don't know if the chamber is responsible for it, the city. I mean, if it is going to go up Yellowstone, fine. Let residents make accommodations for it. Let us do something that we can protect our properties so we don't have thousands of people just coming on and causing damage. It's going to happen. I mean, I've been personal experience of it. Halloween's a different crowd. I know you might say, well, Halloween, they close off. There's tons of people. Little kids with parents, all well behaved. They stay on the sidewalk, a lot of them in the streets. They haven't been drinking all day. Pretty good crowd. I don't think that 4th of July crowd is going to be the same. So my question to whoever can answer it is, would there be some kind of concessions made if it does go up Yellowstone for residents to protect their property that might go against code? I mean, I don't want to put up that orange tape. I think it looks stupid and it would just take away from the feel, but I don't know how you're going to keep people off your property and cause damage. And you might say, oh, well, there's insurance that'll cover it. Try to get restitution. My wife spends a lot of time in flower beds doing the flowers. And again, there's only a couple hundred people in Porch Fest, right through the flower bed. They don't care. It's not worth the aggravation to say, hey, I know you got insurance. I got to replace plants, my time. It's not worth the aggravation. 7, 8, 9,000 people. I can't imagine what that's going to be like. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
My name's Philip Bowers, 701 North End Street, Livingston. I'm here in regards to the historical parade route up 2nd, Cross Park, and down Main. I've been in the parade since I was pooping yellow and wiping it on my face. I can count on one hand the amount of times that my family's mule, pack string, hasn't been in the parade. It has been one of the most rewarding yearly activities I participate in, being able to have the opportunity to bring the grand mule string to town and display them for the community event in this setting is one of the things that has made the parade great and meaningful to my family and many others. Waving at spectators that have never seen anything like it in downtown historical Livingston, Montana, with the high brick buildings on both sides swapping stories of how many horses and mules have been up and down this route over the years is unforgettable for any spectator or participant. Many have said that safety is an issue. We can't get emergency vehicles through Park Street in the 3 hours of parade. If safety is a concern, why would we take down the orange flags for the pedestrians to cross Park Street? Why would we detour I-90 through Park Street? Vehicles are backed up from the truck stop clear to the White Sulphur Springs interchange. come across the tracks any weekday at 8 a.m. and show me how you're going to bring your emergency vehicle across the tracks. Farmers market last week, Wednesday, they had it closed. Part of the street was closed. There was an individual that needed medical personnel. They couldn't get the ambulance there. But at the end of the day, none of these points that I just mentioned stop any event. I'm a second generation Montana outfitter. I get safety. Clients' families themselves trust my wife and I every season in the area of safety. I don't want to see anybody safety compromised, but at the same time, I can't just stop my operation because there is more risk in carrying a rifle than a fly rod. I have seen many safety issues get better over time with the parade and seen many volunteers helping with parade safety also. It has been mentioned also that the infrastructure downtown can't handle it. Why are we redoing the sewer, water, sidewalks, and streets then if we're trying to make the downtown nice? I thought the common goal has been to get more people to the downtown businesses. Why would we take the parade that generates millions to the downtown away from it? There are two major things folks come home for in this community: Christmas and the parade, not necessarily in that order. Why are the staff members that seem to be anti-tourism able to railroad what happens and doesn't happen in this town? The last time I checked, you folks were the elected. I hope as the duly elected city commission, you are able to see past some opinions. So let's all work together as a community in a little compromise and make this parade great again. Amen.
Jay Keeper, 325 South Main. There, I received a phone call from somebody that's now in Miami, Florida, and he graduated from Park High in 1986. He will be back again this year for this to watch the parade. This parade, people make it's a destination point for family reunions, class reunions on there. And this is something that the city manager fails to realize the importance of this parade on our community. Like other people said, he's a short timer. He has absolutely no history of what this means on there. It's just something in the past. Let me go on there. Speaking about the lights on Park Street, I don't know who the evil genius was that designed the current timing between 7th and 5th. There, I don't know why there couldn't have been, when the 7th Street lights went up in the 5th Street, why they couldn't have been coordinated. I don't know why city staff, if they're concerned about support, why they haven't reached out to the community saying, we want this to continue, but we need you to step up to the plate. None of this happened because I think they just wanted to wash their hands of this and pretend this is just a bad nightmare. It is a nightmare with the current staff, but I've got good news for you. We have people in this room tonight that are working with legal counsel that will be drafting a petition to change the form of government from this city to a city manager to a commission there. And if there was a city manager, the city manager would be under the commission, and the city commissioner, city manager would not be the one that's pulling the trigger in killing events. Excuse me. The city manager and the county commission are all out, and they're basically encouraging people to vote for a safety mill levy for the ambulance. Well, I did a little walk down Main Street, and I think if the commissioner and the commissioners and the city manager would have done a little walking, they would have found out something that I did. The average business on Park Street and Main Street, with the traffic rerouted last year, lost $2,500 in income minimum. And now they come, and now the city comes up, well, we need this, we need this, we need this. And then when you take away Christmas in July for downtown in Livingston, and basically the history of the parade, you're just trying to kill this town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. And then thank you, Philip. Earlier, I forgot to thank you.
Jimbo Logan, 285 Lower Cottonwood Road. I'm from the north end of the county. I'm not here to point any fingers, and I truly understand where the emergency services are coming from, but you got to remember what our 4th of July here in Park County is about. This rodeo has been going on for 93 years, and I don't know if the parade's been there every year.
So 94 years for the rodeo, 93 for the parade.
Okay, there you go. 93 for the parade, 94 for the rodeo. I think that we all need to work together and make it work. Park Street included. I think it needs to stay on the route that it has. Coming up 2nd Street to make that big turn up there on the park. That's the way that it has to happen for some of the bigger outfits. But I had the privilege of setting up in the balcony of the Elks with my wife's folks that have a hard time getting around. And Doug Precy let us have his seats up there for them to come in and set up there and watch that parade come up 2nd Street. I'm going to tell you, it's pretty awesome. And we do have a beautiful parade here. Like I said, I'm not here to point any fingers or throw any dirt. I just want you to know that I think it's a beautiful event and it needs to proceed the way that it has. Thank you. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Thank you. Jimbo, is that right?
Daniel Berquist, 432 North 5th Street. In 1 year, there's 8,760 hours. For anybody on the north side, 4,380 of those, or 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. A real safety issue could happen, especially with the trains, poorly timed lights, and not enough exits. Then what does the city do? They approve 400 house development and now are soon going to vote on a 56 unit zoning change. The average American house has 2.28 cars. That'll add over 1,000 vehicles. But here we are worried about 3 hours. That comes to 0.000342% of the time you're worried about our safety. If you cared about our safety, you would have fixed the north side before approving mass development. This is about gentrification, anti-tourism, and control, and to make us like the fancy place in Bozeman. So the people that want to compromise or want to find the middle road, I want to say this. What's next? When will it stop? If they win, this will embolden this type of behavior. They will chip and chisel at every aspect of your history, traditions, and way of life. Next, they'll come for the rodeo because too many people show up, and some people find it cruel. Next, they'll come for the fireworks because 3 nights, that's just too much. Next, they'll come for the helicopter with Old Glory because helicopters crash. Next, they'll come for the open container law because people will get drunk on America's birthday. Next, they'll come for the amount of flags in the parade and limit it to 1 per entry because someone might be offended. Next, they'll make construction barricades between the road, the people to keep them safe. Then next, they'll come for the horns to protect the children's ears. These are facts. These aren't wild conspiracies. I've seen this with my own eyes. It's what they have done to us where I came from, and they will do it to you here too. So if you do not make a stand, you will compromise your life and your way of life away. In closing, I ask the commissioners to please side with the people. We are a representative democracy, which means you represent us. We vote for you, so please vote to represent us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. No one else?
My name's Margot Blake. Margot Coffer Blake is my homeowner. I live at 116 South Yellowstone Street. Last night was the first time I heard of this issue about the parade. I'd heard some rumors, I'd heard different things floating around. It's very difficult for me to tell you how surprised I am that this issue has even come up. I spoke with somebody today at the Chamber of Commerce, and also know a couple of my neighbors have spoken to, because we all got on the horn with each other. Nobody had heard anything about this issue, that the parade was possibly going to be moved onto Yellowstone Street. We are all against it because of everybody that I spoke with, because we don't think that a private residential street is the appropriate place for the city of to have a parade when this is put on by the Chamber of Commerce, and it is done to benefit the businesses downtown, to benefit the community, to bring people around. I ride my bike around the parade every year, and what I notice is a tremendous flow of people between 2nd Street and 3rd Street as they go back and forth. They buy lemonade, they're buying hot dogs, they're cruising around, kids are on their bikes, people are on their bikes. I have seen some roller skaters in some years, but having the two streets adjacent to each other really helps to promote this sense of community that brings 10,000 people into Livingston. So what I'm hearing is, by having the parade come down or go up, since they're going north, up Yellowstone Street, is that each street is now going to be divided by these blocks of Lewis and Clark of the parade and Geyser. They're blocking people off. That doesn't make sense to me. Every year I have people knocking on my door to see if I'm home that I don't know. I have had my yard walked through. I've had my gates left open. Anybody who thinks that it doesn't affect the neighborhood is absolutely wrong. I will tell you, on Saturday night, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning because a drunk man was walking down the middle of Yellowstone Street. And it's dark, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I watched him. I knew by the time I called the police, who knows where he's gone. But this happens every year. I think the parade is meant to benefit the businesses and the community of Livingston within a very succinct space. I understand the issues of safety and that have been determined by both the police chief, who just said he made a smart aleck remark about not having the parade. I think that's inappropriate to make a smart aleck remark about something that has brought up so much strife within the community. All of, like I said, I'm just hearing about in less than 24 hours. The safety issues have always been there, of whether anybody could get back and forth across the community. I think that now, with the heightened awareness of the parade, if it is able to continue on Park Street, people will cooperate even more so, because they want to maintain the Livingston Parade as it has been. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot.
Good evening. This looks like it might be a long meeting. I've watched Dale handle this parade from the very first year that he started. And I know that he has more experience in handling the parade than probably anybody else here. And he has earned your respect in so far as his opinion is presented.
Will you take a moment to say your name and address?
Of course, thank you. Courtney Llewellyn, and I have a business at 519 West Park Street, and then I live out in the county at 12 Church Drive. I also know that the staff have carefully considered what it is that they're presenting to you, no matter whether they've been here a year or 5 years or more than 20. And I don't envy you in your position, but I heard something recently that I wanted to share with you, and that is that politics is a competition between partial truths. And that may be accurate or it may be humorous, but no matter who is arguing their respective positions, we expect you as the decision makers to take those competing truths and make the best decisions that you can for the community. And I've known most of you quite some time, and some of you not as long, but I believe that you will do that and that you will listen to the people who are bringing their truths and their feelings before you. And while there may be some benefits of leadership, this is probably not one of those times. There are good factual arguments on both sides, notwithstanding the public safety issues, which I have visited about with both city and rural folks. And I hope that this conversation can create not only a decision, but a space in which the community can come together to keep the parade going into the future and to foster the relationship and connections that will make that happen. I did want to add one other thing. There was a question earlier from the commission about who was the DOT person that kind of made this happen before. And that was Jerry Martello and some other folks at DOT before him, although he was there a very long time before he was the head of the Livingston branch. And he's no longer with us, unfortunately, but he was so connected that it wasn't even a second thought for him to advocate for his branch. And then when he was then under the Bozeman branch, for that to continue to happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Any other public comment?
James Duncan, 4 Chesapeake Drive, Livingston. So I'm out in the county, but most of my work is done here in downtown Livingston. A lot of amazing points have been made this evening, and I'm not going to really repeat any of them in regards to points for the parade being left the way it was. But I am going to echo one gentleman's comment about what happens when you start to slowly compromise on some of these issues. And that is that I don't have a lineage of 5 generations in this town. I don't have 4. I only have 2. I moved here 6 years ago. And one thing that led me to this town above 15 others we considered to move to was it seemed to be honest to itself as a Western town that valued what it was and it valued its history. We could have went to Billings, we could have went to Bozeman, we could have went to a lot of other places, but Livingston stood out for this sort of fierce independence that this is who we are. We're a Western town. We have culture, we have history, and we're going to keep it that way, damn it, one way or the other. And this conversation about this change, and I know there's safety things that could come up any day of the week, but especially when we have a road closed for the parade. It does kind of echo the gentleman's comment that you go down a bit of a slippery slope. You know, I grew up in the late 80s and we did enjoy a parade in our town in Ohio. And it was a very well attended parade. I mean, the streets were, you had 2 or 3 lines of people deep, the whole route down what was a single strip down the main street of that city of Salem, Ohio. And it was a very successful parade. And what happened as I got older is it started to get attended less and less. And as I got older and I kind of understood what the reason was, is that it was cumbersome to block your main thoroughfare through that town. And so what they had done is they moved it. They moved it a couple streets over off the main thoroughfare. Traffic flowed as it would have through that town on any other day. The parade and its importance seemed to have been set aside for the sake of flow of everyday life. And instead of pausing to look and see, pausing to stop and consider and appreciate, it was put out of the way so that everyone's normal day wouldn't be affected. And that parade just decreased in attendance till it became almost a non-issue. I think there is still a parade, but most people don't go to it. And it's only been reduced to almost 2 blocks now from what used to be 6. So I don't want to see the things that I've seen in Midwest and larger towns happen to this place. I moved to Livingston because I love what it was. I don't want to come here and try to change it. Like, I'm new here, but I came here because of what it is. And even though we're talking about potentially just a single block change, that's a major block. That's a big part. And as I think it was Leslie had said, it's more than just a single block. It's 3 blocks, of the parade route, of businesses who are making one of their biggest weekends of the year during this event. And to move something that's been going around almost 100 years, it just seems like we're playing with fire and where it could go. Now, this change, even if we went down to calendar, we gave that a shot to construction, and we had some incidences with the corners. So it does seem like the original route would be the best route, not as far as emergency services are concerned, but for the history and the tradition of this town that seems to bring a lot of people in. So that's all I wanted to say, is just be cautious about the direction you go for the future, because it's going to set a precedence moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
I'm Kim Shatola. I live at 7 Paradise Ranch Road. I live at 7 Paradise Ranch Road, Kim Shatola. I've actually only lived here for 2 years. I'm from Texas, and one of the things why my husband and I moved here is we wanted to very much be a part of this wonderful community that is here. And so much that I actually am new to the chamber board, because I wanted to see if I can make a difference and have the opportunity to serve. And my husband and I really love the historic nature of this town. And I understand safety. My husband worked over 25 years for the Houston Fire Department. My father was a homicide detective for the city of Houston also. So I do get the safety concerns, but there are many rural communities, rural towns in Texas, and I lived actually outside of Houston, and there were parades. And the one thing that I wanted to echo that was said earlier was that, why can't we all work together and preserve the historic nature? And are we interested in, the tourism? I mean, it seems to me that Livingston has kind of been built on tourism. That's one of the reasons we found this city. It's a gateway to Yellowstone. Many people have found it this way. And in our communities, where there were parades and stuff, fire departments called on other fire departments to help. So to me, there's a lot of opportunities for volunteers to help, whether it's police or fire, or I don't know about the funding part of actually hiring someone to do any of that. But I guess you have to ask yourself, to me, what's important and what does that future look like? Because changing something of this historic nature, to me, affects everything from here on out. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kim.
My name is Joshua Reynolds. I live at 13 Riverside Drive, and I'm a member of the Chamber Board of Commerce, of the Chamber of Commerce Board. I just wanted to keep it brief because everyone said so many good things here. I wanted to thank the city employees for their work on this. Obviously, they've thought a lot about this and they have their jobs to do, and it makes sense. If I were the chief of police, I'd probably be against having the parade go down Park Street too, but I'm not. And I think it's worth the risk. I think it's a very brief period of time. I thought at first the numbers presentation I thought was silly, but then it actually was poignant. It is a very brief period of time. That may matter to someone, obviously, but it's been happening for 93 years, and I think it's worth the risk. And I think we just need to figure out a way to make it happen, put it back on Park Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua.
Good evening. My name's Tim Bowers. I grew up in Livingston. I live in the Paradise Valley at 136 Deep Creek Road. I'll amen to everything I pretty much heard tonight from the folks that are in support of the parade. I'm work for the railroad. I'm an outfitter now. I got to fulfill my dream, and I've been taking people out of horseback for well over almost 40 years. And I know about safety as well, and I understand these folks' concerns. One of my sayings is that I feel when anybody comes to my place to ride, they're literally putting their life in my hands, and that's what they're doing. And I'm sure some of these folks feel the same way. But on the other note, just like today, I take people out horseback riding. I got 6-year-old kids. I've got old people that want to go, that should maybe. I got good stock, but every time I put them on there, I'm the one that's responsible for them. And I thank the good Lord, I've never had anybody hurt seriously, but those are kind of things that you have to, if I was worried about somebody getting hurt all the time, I wouldn't be in business. And the other thing about points I wanted to make is that downtown business people, when anytime, and it's been brought up too about wanting money for an ambulance, the police people call me up wanting money for different organizations, charities, things like that. They always go to the business people because business people got all the money in the world and they can just hand it out to you. You always get the phone call. So I think it's very important to think about them as well in this, but I won't belabor this because, like I said, everything that's been said here has been real good. I run a guide and packer school out of my business too, and I teach people that come to my place and they stay for 30 days how to ride horses, pack the mules, watch after clients and things like that. And it's kind of a joke around my place because somebody asked me if how to do something or something after they've learned it or something. I said, well, it doesn't matter to me how you do it as long as you do it right, but don't split the church over it. And that's kind of what's happening right now. You're splitting the church by not making a decision to leave things the way they were. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments? Four minutes, Leslie? Can you do it?
Yes. So after hearing from everybody this evening, I guess my final part is that what I want to discuss is again about the insurance. This is the city's temporary closure. On here are the requirements on the back page. Aggregate limit 2 million, and the list goes on. Here's the insurance policy from the chamber. As you can see, it's 4 million. Everything else is met at the standard level. And this actually also discusses the city's temporary closure on number 4, which talks about how we holding the insurance policy for a closure in the city. We hold the city harmless. So we cover So you're not responsible for that. I also, I think I forwarded all of you the office, the governor's letter. I just wanted you, that was something we should be proud about. The first time ever that the office of the governor
I don't think we
gave,
got it.
you guys didn't receive this letter? Okay, I will definitely give you a copy of this. You guys can see it after, I guess. On behalf of the state of Montana, it's my pleasure to inform you that the Livingston Area Chamber of Commerce and CVB is awarded a tourism event grant of $4,600 through the Montana Office of Tourism Business Development and the Department of Commerce. Partnerships such as this are key to strengthening Montana's tourism and recreation industry. Events supported through tourism grant programs attract visitors, enhance attendance, and increase economic revenues for your community. With this in mind, I'd like to personally thank the Livingston Area Chamber of Commerce for partnering with the state of Montana. Again, congratulations and good luck on a successful hosting of the 93rd Annual Livingston Roundup Parade. Sincerely, Governor Bullock. He also has been in our parade many times. Also wanted to bring up, I received an email late last night from Alan Redfield, Mike Tooley, and as well as Kyle DeMars, a conversation that I was made privy to. But as you know, my signature came from Kyle DeMars's boss, which district administrator, his name is Jeff Ebert. The only thing we were not party to in all of this was just a sit down conversation after we turned in the original application. Like last year, the board and myself were invited to sit down with the staff and discuss these kind of issues and the reason why we had to change the route last year. And it was supposed to be only a temporary closure. We're willing to work. If we have to get more than 44 volunteers to help us, I'm sure that not only these folks in the room, but many other of those 2,000 signatures would love to help us this year to make sure that it's even a safer event, and cover all of the responsibilities that the city emergency services are asking from us. So I guess on that, I just appreciate you taking the time and seriously thinking about going back to the historic route, protecting the historic route, so we don't have to do this every year. And that's extremely important for us. So thank you very much. And I hope that we don't have to use Yellowstone. I really don't, because it's not going to work out right. Which is why I was hoping to come up here in front of you before we address the citizens of that street. It just is not going to benefit our community. And I'm here for your questions at this point as well.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
I was asked to have a break. So can we take a 5-minute break? And then we will reconvene. Faith, can you put 5 on it, just so we have a 5?
You go for it. Oh,
So where do we fit in?
Well, if you want to change your ordinance, yeah. Yeah, but you know.
Made quite a few notes here. It's really, it's
Yeah, good.
kind of chemical.
You never think
And
of
you know what it
setting
comes down to?
precedents. I'll file out of way.
They got rodeos, parades, fireworks, family, friends, holidays.
When you ask about
Biggest
how to
issue
deal
is parade without park or with park.
time.
And I'm saying something's out of kilter. I mean, what the?
I don't get it.
No, I live on Yellowstone Street during Halloween. Closed down. Why? Safety.
Right.
We still give out 1,000 pieces of candy.
Yeah.
But safety is a key issue. The little kids running across the street at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's dark.
No. I don't know.
I'm all safety, man. I don't want that liability.
I know.
Although that does seem like a point of reference when maybe they need to be cleaned up. Like, this one says this, and this one says this.
But I understand your position, wanting to have streets and all this stuff, but the bottom line is, because these tools, they don't have it. But this is, that's what we put in here. 10,000, I can guarantee you, 10,000 people.
You can add, yeah.
Oh, you're looking for parking, and only for such a period of time. You know, and especially just where I live, is where the big new house has got.
Oh, yeah.
And the church, I live on Yellowstone, you know, that alley is what I share with Fifth Street. So that makes
It's still got it.
people parking in alley, that's eliminated parking for probably. And. You know, but I mean, I just, right.
And then somewhere, I didn't look at the date, I didn't see the date on
The first one. Fire people, they had police, they had all these people for a year.
It wasn't originally a 40 and it was 5 in 2000. So the one that's the commission in.
Yeah.
It seems like it might have been.
Like I said, I have this, boy, I must have had 5 phone calls tonight. From the time I spoke to this, yeah, you're talking about, and the time that I thought I
And the new one,
got
revised in
discovered.
2004, was that.
I believe that, I believe that.
Yeah, it's kind of, so I have everybody dressed,
Seems like.
but
maybe
I
it was a
mean, I'm just like,
back then,
I'm just.
for that exact same reason. So they figured adding another entity.
See, it's just like,
No.
It wasn't definitive enough.
so are all these.
Because it seemed like.
But, you know, the other thing is like, I wish I could say that I'm my own personality. Perhaps I'm not qualified to speak about this issue, you know, but I've been in the parade, I've marched in the parade, and I've distributed candy, and I've volunteered with a couple of other groups, and, you know, I just think it's. I guess they're just really.
I guess she was the one who was on.
The thing is,
You've been on
all
the
it
commission
takes is
since
one
I've been.
tractor to shut down parking. And there's, but what they're saying is that. They've never been able to get through on calendar,
When I know Sarah was there when I first.
you know, and you were routed back and
Before her was, I don't know if you were on there when, John Reddington, he was on there. When John was up there, and then Sarah came.
I think my microphone went to sleep.
And they actually just block it off like. Yeah, so people can look, I can't.
Really? They used to send the other guy.
How you doing? Yeah. I got my little license.
Oh, he did? You say it must be pretty recent. Bigger, better things elsewhere?
I think they're both kind of pursuing like
That's right. Last week, he was, program.
you guys have done so good. I want everyone out there, but you said not to redo anything. I don't want to be here till 10.
I've been doing.
Thank you.
Well, there's more things that I can see. I don't think we can at least the kitchen is the same before. I really like how that gentleman's he said about the fire. Police chief, and not only one of the 5 incidents we had. That's great. Oh,
That are really partners. So is that the one?
I guess one of the things I asked these guys too, proof that there's been an accident on Park Street, and because there was.
Let's get Warren. Where's well, where is Nell? Okay.
It's yellow in the men's room.
How many acts, how many persons?
going on? I didn't know if there's something.
My past work was I've heard of the parking lot.
It was the long, chain, they were like, horses. Yeah, it was trying to make the turn, well, it had a big like, there he is. It was one of our little, we had a bunch of Christians on it.
Well, I've had to be in parades before I tried to explore. It seems like it might be an ambulance, and that parade was the first so that they could get out. But they were doing their lights and their sirens, and my horses were right behind them. Which I pulled off, but
Well, I know, but that's where we just, oh, yeah, I turn the sirens on. Like, that's why it's important for us to make sure we have volunteers.
and if that's needed this year, that's the way you can go with that. I know that I myself.
I was no one really talked to each other like it's Portland is right. Everyone is nice. It's really different. I guess there are some people still.
Over there.
You want a principal next year at your school?
Yes.
Huh?
Don't mess with me.
Are you gonna be principal next year?
I'm the principal next year.
Good for you.
I am the
Yeah, yeah.
principal next year for the middle school. Yeah. Thank you. I'm nothing else to do, so might as well add. Ay, ay, ay.
Now we snack together?
Okay. This meeting is adjourned. So do we have any final public comments before we move forward?
Just have one really quick one. I don't know if anybody's answered. Rusty Trespass 217 West Park, and it's about the staffing problem because that was brought up. Where are you advertising to get the city staff? Are you? And can you give us an update on when we're going to be fully staffed so that we don't have to worry about being understaffed for events and this kind of a situation? Thank you.
Thank you. Rusty. Thank you, Rusty. Do you have any updates?
You go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jen. The city has a recruiting policy and we recruit on various forms of social media as well as Indeed. We also do some local advertising in the paper depending on the position, and we'll do outreach nationally through specific foundations or groups, like if we're recruiting for firefighters or special boards just for firefighters. We've also done an outreach program with the high school this year to try to get seasonals in as they were exiting the high school. So that is our recruiting strategy at the moment.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So we are at Jay. Jay, you've already,
Can I indulge
you
you for
used
30
all
seconds?
four of your
Well,
minutes.
I know, but Leslie had a chance to come back. Can I just, are we gonna have the same problem with the
See,
hoot?
that's exactly what
Are
I
we
worried
gonna have
about.
the same problem with the hoot? Is the fire department, and police department gonna be concerned about the hoot on there? I expect the same situation to say, if you know what, the hoot's getting too big. Thank you.
All right. Any last public comment on the parade route? Okay. So I feel like I would like to hear any comments or I have a big list, and I would love to have the commission address this as well, each member. I'm going to be honest, just before I go into my list, I'm going to come back to my list if you wouldn't mind. But I have to say, I am frustrated to be in this place, having to be perceived that we have a vote on this. This isn't a voting item. And being pressured that a couple things that I had a call today in support of the original or the historic route that threatened that, well, you'll see it on election day and at various levies and such if we don't get our way on this route. And that makes me sad for our community. That we're going to, based on a parade route, we're going to stop any progress towards really positive change because we can't get along or come to, and I heard this word probably 5 times tonight, compromise. Because everyone's using the word, but no one's wanting to compromise. And that I have a hard time with. Because in my job, if I did that, we wouldn't get very far. So on that, I would love some other thoughts and comments from commission before I have more.
Can I add one thing to your statement before we start with our comments? I echo what you have already said, but I also think how wonderful that our parade is so huge and that so many people come to Livingston that we have these challenges. Like, this is not, it's not the worst problem to have a lot of people coming to our town. Just for some perspective. And that says a lot about our community. And that's a wonderful thing. I just think it's important also to remember that. It's about our community. And it's a wonderful thing. Before we start getting into the questions, yeah. And I don't need to be first.
Go ahead.
And then.
And then. I really don't need to be first, but I will because somebody needs to be first. I have a lot of questions. I feel like liability has been explained in more than one way. So that's still not totally clear, I think. Like, I don't even know if like $4 million policy for what? Like just something that happens in the parade or something that happens in town when the parade is happening? Or does it all fall back on the city? I mean, ideally nothing would happen and we wouldn't need to use an insurance policy. But if it comes to that, what does it mean? And I don't know who can answer that question, if that's Jay or do you have a sense or?
It could mean a lot of different things, you know. Does the Chamber's insurance policy cover if our emergency services are slowed down to the north side? You know, I don't know. You know, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball to see exactly who somebody who feels aggrieved is going to sue. More than likely, they're going to include the city in it, you know, and that's the standpoint I look at it from. People like to sue the city. That's just the way it is. I mean, you guys all know that. So, I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's kind of
It was honest and
where we're at.
yeah.
And I'll just add to that, some of it's going to depend on the type of situation and what the finding is. If it becomes a traffic situation, the NTSB is going to weigh in. If they say the city was liable,
The who?
the National Traffic Safety Board,
Thank you.
if they decide the city was liable for allowing the closure, then it doesn't matter what kind of insurance the chamber is carrying. The city would be liable if they said we were negligent in even allowing the closure. You know, if it's something on the parade route, in general, that's going to be covered by the chamber's insurance. If somebody trips and falls, or they fall off a float, or, you know, if the horse runs into the crowd, that generally is going to be covered by the chamber's insurance, which is why they're required to carry insurance for special events, just like anyone else. But it's the external parts that are less clear and probably more likely to fall on the city. If there's a delay in service that causes a death or a significant injury in a different part of the city, the chamber wouldn't be held responsible for that because the city was in charge of the process that allowed that street closure.
So it's gray and honest. I have a lot of questions, so I'm really just trying to think like what are the most important things to ask because I don't want to, you know, take up all the space in the room. One thing that stood out to me, and I was unclear on the meaning. I think I know, but I don't know for sure. Leslie said that she can't work on an alternative route if she isn't able to sit down with the appropriate people, indicating, I think, that she'd wanted to sit down with specific city staff members. Does that mean that she wants to consider an alternative route if she can sit down with people? Or is Park Street the only option on the table for the chamber? That's it's up to you if she can answer that.
Last year, we were invited to sit down during this discussion to go over the route itself, and we worked together. And this year, we were not given that option, knowing that we no longer have the construction. However, the construction, it was built in to close the construction, and we were able, you know, it was built into the construction plan so that we can go over the third block of Main Street. So I guess I'm just a little confused. But I probably wouldn't be confused if we were able to sit down at that meeting. The staff had a meeting without inviting us this year. So that's what I meant by that.
But I just was unclear on that statement. Does that mean that you wanted to consider an alternative route, or it's because the message I thought I was getting was that you were committed to Park Street as your.
This is the historic route that we want to return to now that the Main Street the construction is done.
I just wanted to make sure I
Yes.
understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, sorry, I'm not moving super fast through my questions. I guess Chair Hoagland, I wonder, I think that both chiefs brought up some interesting things about Park Street. And I wonder if there's anything, if we thought wildly differently about Park Street, could we meet the needs of emergency services and have the parade there? And the things that are coming through my head are things like the fire chief talked about how there's just not enough crew, right? We know that the budget for that department has constraints. If they had more money, maybe they could have more people working during that event, but they're not able to set up like these satellite safety stations, like Commissioner maybe mentioned, because they just don't have the funding. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is, you know, what if this is a big question with, I don't expect this answer is going to be presented right now, but you know, what if we had the ability to do that? The fire chief had the ability to have more staff on and have second stations or these satellite stations set up. Would that make a difference? It sounds like the police chief, everybody's working, everybody on staff is working for that 3 hours. So they're also running at max. Can anything be differently? Can we think about the parade differently? Like, is there any, I don't know the answers to these questions, and maybe they're going to seem way out there. But is it possible to reserve part of Park Street only for emergency services? And like adjust parking, like you said, and have the parade on the other side? Like, I don't even know if that's physically possible with the size of floats. It sounds like maybe it's not if intersections are too small, but like, is there any, I don't know if there's any way to keep a corridor wherever that is. Like, is there a way to change the parade so some side streets are not blocked by people or floats? So that if emergency vehicles need to go from east to west, they're not trying to shuffle people around. I mean, because this problem seems like it's bigger than a parade, right? Like, this is a bigger problem when we have lots of people downtown. It's any big event. Can we think about safety differently? Is there some measures that we could take to make it easier so that we can retain some of the traditions, but make like these, what's the word, like a thorough way or like a thoroughfare for emergency vehicles to get through, to prioritize that? I don't know if any of those things are possible. Thinking about people on the street on Park, that was a good point brought up, that the sidewalks are much narrower compared to some of the other streets downtown, like there's less space between the building and the street, like on Park Street, compared to some of the side streets that are wider. Is there a way we can think about how people are in that space differently to increase safety so that some of these vehicles can move through without worrying about like hitting children or pedestrians? And I suppose these are, I don't know who these questions would even be asked to. It would take extreme coordination, if it's even possible, between volunteers and the organizers and the emergency crews. But those are the things that are coming to mind. I hear what both sides are saying. I appreciate I appreciate this tradition in our community, and that we're at an interesting time in the history of Livingston where people don't want everything to change. So they're being really mindful about what they choose to get behind. And I also appreciate these just heart-wrenching stories that the chiefs shared, and both chiefs. And thank you for your service to our community, that you do this every day, and we're just hearing about it sporadically. Like, I don't know, it's not easy, but I yield.
Other commissioners?
Well, the main thing, one of the main things that I've gotten out of this is that a decision can be made without running it by anybody else. Barring an absolute catastrophe, I was surprised to see an ordinance that allowed one person to make a final decision, again, on something short of a real catastrophe. So that's, to me, that's one thing that's come out of this. And the rest is kind of a balancing act. You're talking about a degree of increase in safety, the degree of which I'm not really sure how great it is. The other thing is, I think that going down Yellowstone is certainly in the negative side of the board. It offers nowhere near the same viewing area without disturbing other people that second does. Going down Calendar certainly cuts off the financial gain for quite a number of businesses. And it's really a balancing act. if the sarcastic part of me wants to say that everybody in the country should be wrapped in Kevlar and bubble wrap. And that's kind of the way it's heading. And some of the stuff works fine. Seatbelts are a great thing. But at some point, it gets beyond, it gets into the negative realm. And I'm not going to judge whether this is getting into the negative realm or not, but it certainly isn't a catastrophe. Thank you.
This is interesting. We have in front of us here a budget. We had a budget meeting a few weeks ago and nobody came from the public. This is damn important stuff. And what we're talking about, right, is important. Now, I live on a corner of, almost on a corner of South Yellowstone and Geyser. Halloween, the street closes down. Main reason, safety. We still give out 1,100, 1,200 pieces of candy. But from a homeowner standpoint and a person that stands out in the cold or sometimes a nice night, it's a wonderful experience. Primary thing is safety. And we were so elated when they decided to close the street down because you see these kids at 8, 9 o'clock in a dark night going across the street with traffic. And so there's no traffic.
Hey, Mel, can you wait a second? We have to vote to extend the meeting.
Yeah. So I took a few notes real quick.
Just wait, we got to extend. Do I have a motion from the
Oh, yeah, we can
commission
do
to
it.
extend the meeting?
I move we extend.
Yep.
Second.
I have a motion by Maybe and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please. Yes,
4.
4.
Or
Four.
motion passes. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Let's talk about the whole weekend here in Livingston. It's a holiday. Extra people. We have a rodeo. We have a parade. We have fireworks. We have people that are visiting family. We have friends that are coming in to visit their friends. Very busy time. And when I look at the parade, I used to live in Winchester, Virginia. We had an apple blossom parade for 8 hours. It never hit the downtown section. It went right through this beautiful historic area. 8 hours. You wanted to know the people lived on the route because they had drinks and they had food and everybody had a great time. 8 hours. A lot of bands from all over the United States. Special time of the year. And last year we had the parade. And we had the parade. We've been here since 1998. We're at a crossroads that we're going to have a parade with or without Park Street. That's the bottom line. With or without Park Street. And as commissioners, we're not involved in this. And it's great to see everybody come here and voice their opinion. And, I wish it happened more often where we have this input. With or without Park Street. So I don't know. We were without Park Street last year. Leslie, what are we talking about? Two blocks, 3 blocks?
The difference between a historic route, and that's 3 blocks of business. So, from the Owl to the Murray, the depot, all the way over, the seniors that are handicapped, they park in the beanery.
Right.
So that's handicap parking and access and viewing area, just like John's mom.
Yeah.
And then down on the first block of Main, we have that brand new, big, huge business. Many of those others that lost out last year.
That's the difference of the whole thing we're talking about.
It's the historic parade route that we're asking for to return to what, I mean,
They
if you-
still go down, Main Street is the big thing. We didn't have that last year.
because of the dirt and the construction and all the sticking up pieces of metal that just,
That's a huge part of it too.
that was the main part was the sidewalks. You couldn't even use those either.
Okay. So this is a tough issue. I yield.
Even if I had the choice, I mean, if the commission had the choice of selecting the parade route, I still would defer to the chief of police, the fire department, and the professionals that ensure our safety and stuff. I know nobody's, as far as I know, nobody's died yet, but why do we have to wait till there is a catastrophe to do something that makes sense? I'm in favor of the parade going up second, the calendar to Main. I believe if we really look at it, calendar, it's just as wide as it would be on Park Street. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but since the construction that we've done on calendar, I believe it's at least the same width, if not wider. And I've got to wonder, you know, there's a reason why the state pulled out of it as well. They don't want the liability, you know.
I have a signed document. They did not pull out.
Well, they're not providing the services they used to, correct?
I have a signed document from the district manager. Absolutely.
Yeah, saying that where is it? We are.
The reason why MDT decided not to
It's-
supply the closures was because somebody decided to drive directly into one and sue them.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Well,
just
there-
the
there's a
two
reason why-
barriers.
Yeah, but it's gonna,
It's just like those white barriers that you put up when you close the street.
Right.
That's the only thing they're not supplying.
yeah, but also the liability falls back on City of Livingston.
Okay.
Well, so that's all. But yeah, there again, it's a liability issue. It's a gray area, you know. Nobody loves to sue, and they're gonna sue the city first. They got the money. Let's see what else? What was it? I don't know. I've been attending this parade for 27 years now, and I've seen it grow, and it's gotten big, and I've loved it going down Park Street and stuff like that. But at some point, you know, you got to weigh the risk, and I'd still would defer to our professionals to. And another reason I think the reason the ordinance was written the way it was to keep politics out of it. So it just couldn't be administered willy-nilly, you know, from one commission to the next as well. So I kind of stand by the ordinance, but there again, it could be changed, but it'd be a lengthy, you know, process, you know, nothing that could be done before the parade. So I yield.
Any other comments? Anyone off of what others have said? So I want to address a few issues that did come up when people made comments, and I do appreciate how many people, I wish we, like others have said, heard from you this often over other issues. There was a comment made that the city and the commission are not in support of businesses. I want to make sure everyone knows I disagree. I think that just the focus on getting the downtown done in the rate that we have in the past 2 years is a reflection of that. Downtown and what people offer with our downtown, it's pretty amazing for our small town, and I think that's not giving credit to the city or to the commission. The petition, I think, is quite amazing, the diversity of people. I do have a hard time with, as someone who, I've done change.org petitions, but someone from New York City isn't caring about us. So I take our people into consideration, but I'm not going to consider someone who's just clicking on everychange.org. That's what happens. But there's a lot of community here in all these signatures. I do have a question on going back to the liability coverage. Do we have an increase that goes on our books? I know I asked this sort of earlier, but I feel like I didn't have an answer. And I probably didn't ask it correctly, but do we have to add coverage and do we have increased cost with liability? And do we budget for that?
So the liability insurance the city carries through MMIA stays the same. It covers events like this. However, it will not cover it if we're found to be negligent,
Why?
because insurance usually doesn't cover when you're negligent.
Because of voting
Right.
or the decision of the city.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So this is a frustrating part for me, going back to what I said at the beginning of this issue isn't ours, but it was brought to us and it's put on us and we're threatened with it on all sides. And it really isn't ours to vote on, to make a decision to say, hey, we vote, we have an action item and we vote or we approve, discuss, approve, deny this issue. We don't have that. But we do have some other things. What I want is to first point out that it looks like we had 10 months of no communication. And I blame both sides on this. I'm not blaming the city or the chamber, but all of us together made a mistake. And we're left with the fallout. The commission is. And you guys are the most angry at first Michael and then us. But we weren't part of that conversation. So I'm going to request something. We'll see how it goes. I want to request that we all have a meeting. Sit down, come to the table with compromises, which was brought up by supporters of this multiple times. I want to restate that. Come to the table with your minds open, because I really see no minds open over this issue. And Facebook, the bane of my existence, it should not be the reflection of how we get through this issue. And it's shameful that we use that as our source of information, and it has been. So I say we sit down at the table and I call a meeting that I want to go to. Anyone can join me. I'll talk to Michael, talk to Leslie. Let's sit down and talk about how we make this work without treating each other with the disrespect and the rudeness and the threats over something as amazing as a parade. So I want us to sit down like on Monday or Tuesday, maybe afternoon, and sit down and not have everyone here to just complain, but sit down and come up with some plans. What do you do with the $4,600 grant that was referred to? What can we do on the city side to figure out a safe route through the parade in general? What can, like Melissa brought up, she brought up some good points. And what are some thoughts? Because right now neither side's talking. So that's my want, is that we sit down together. I hope never again that we wait 10 months to have a conversation, sitting down, being cordial to each other. So That's what I would like. I don't know what the other commissioners would like at this time, but that's what I call for on Tuesday or Monday.
It's an excellent idea.
Thank you, Warren.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I represent you for the CVB. We have our marketing plan is approved at the TAC, so the Tourism Advisory Commission in Helena on Monday and Tuesday. I get back Tuesday evening.
Wednesday,
Wednesday is absolutely perfect. I'll make any other appointment.
and I'll work with Michael and I'll be there.
I'll be
And
there too.
whoever else is in the game can be there.
Absolutely.
Right? Anything else before we close or move on to city manager comments? All right. Michael?
When we're over 3 hours, I yield.
Yes, which we know. Melissa, you're up.
Shifting gears,
Yes.
planning board. The growth policy is coming up. I don't know what the plan is, the next step is, but I believe the RFQ is going to be going out. I would like to request that the planning board be involved in the process from the very beginning. And that they have review involvement. And I would like to see them involved. We've talked about this a little bit at the planning board. I'd like to see them involved also throughout the public meetings that are conducted by the consultant.
What does that look like?
What is what, which part?
Involvement.
I think that I think it could look like however we wanted it to look. But I think when we talk about planning boards and growth policies, typically it's a big part of what a planning board does. There are community representatives and who we get guidance from and recommendations from. And I think it's, I imagine their role being making sure that our community is represented and all these ideas are like the things that we've been talking about. I know we're not going to get everything we want in our growth policy because money doesn't grow on trees in Livingston, but with that, it blows off. Yeah. But it'd be nice to have them involved from the very beginning, just anticipating that they're going to be, those folks are already thinking about things at a deep level all the time when it comes to the
experience.
and they have
working
experience and it's
through the
why we
problems.
appointed them. So it seems like it could just make it a smoother process going forward if they were involved from the very beginning. And I don't know exactly what that would look like, Jarrell. I think that would just, we could direct that how we want as a commission, but it's just a suggestion that I have. Yep, and everything else. I think planning board canceled this month, or there's no meeting this month. That was the only other planning topic. It's on the calendar, but it's actually not going to happen this month. They'll meet again in July.
Warren?
I yield.
Mel?
I want to thank everybody for showing up. I yield.
Quentin?
Just to, yeah, regarding the growth policy, and it wasn't that long ago, the county did theirs and really successful and well involved. So there is kind of a good model that could be followed, by, checking with Mike Inman and those guys, how they did it. So the number of players that really need to be there to make it successful and stuff. So it wouldn't hurt to reach out to those guys as well, I think, when it comes to that. Other than that, yeah, I thank everybody for coming. Nice to see a nice turnout. I yield.
All right. I just have some logistical questions to start with the planning or with the growth policy. Do we have, I know we're waiting and we're working with another entity. So where are we at with that?
We actually have most of the funding now secured, so we should be able to go forward with the RFQ. I would assume in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the RFQ will be out, and then we'll start taking applications at that point.
So we'd be having first meetings maybe in August or early September.
I would say that's probably in the time frame. It's going to be once the RFQ process is complete, we'll then negotiate with the firm that wins the RFQ process, and then that's when we'll set the work plan for them, and that'll determine when things start.
Okay. And then as far as planning the first neighborhood meetings and on the crossing, like I brought up earlier, which meeting, I guess commissioners as well, when are we going to actually get at least our first one down? Because I'm ready, and I know that people have been very patient. What's it look like as far as city and
So we have the locations looked at. We haven't set the time frame between them. We're waiting to get through the mill levy vote. Once that's complete, we'll set the actual dates for the rest of the meetings. And then the intent would be to have 5 community meetings and then possibly 1 special meeting of the commission afterwards to kind of wrap up and present all the information that's found in those. And then once that's done, I will get the deadline for Maritza, but I think it's 16 August. So we're probably looking at the first, although I think the first meeting in August is the 2nd, so we might even have until the 2nd meeting to finalize the ballot language and get it to Maritza.
okay. So we'll need to meet a lot in the neighborhood meetings in July, really, to get it ready for August.
Right. The neighborhood meetings will mostly take place in July, and then we should be able to put all that together for the first meeting in August.
Great. And I'm trying to think of anything else. I feel like I had one more thing, but I'm forgetting. Oh, I know. Budget meeting is on Thursday at 5. And then our next commission meeting is on the 18th, right? Correct?
Correct. And we'll do the initial budget resolutions on that meeting, the 18th.
And I will not be here on the 18th, which I've been telling everyone for 3 months, just to prep. Just in case you care, I won't be here. All right. So any last things?
I have a question. So the RFQ, is that already defining what's going to be in the growth policy?
The RFQ is a request for qualifications, so they'll actually just be providing qualifications at that point. When we go through the negotiations with the firm is when we'll go through the work plan. They'll give us pricing at that point, because really money spent is going to determine what's done in the study.
Is the planning board able to be a part of some of those conversations for the review?
For the which review?
Of the RFQ,
Thank you.
the firm.
Yes.
How do we
But, like,
go through
what's
the
gonna be in-
process?
and what's going to be in it? Yeah.
It's usually the lowest bid.
It's actually
Or
not.
often, not in
because
this case.
It's an RFQ, not an RFP. So
Oh,
they're not
there you go.
actually, they're not giving a proposal. They're just giving qualifications. So it's the same way we did the impact fee study. There's usually a selection committee that gets the packets of all the firms that present. They'll go through all the packets, they vote, go through a process, and then we select the winner based on qualifications.
So we could include a representative from the planning board.
I'm sure they could be on that, yes.
Great. Good.
Yes, thank you.
We are at the end of our meeting. I entertain a motion from the commission for adjournment. I have a motion by Friedman and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please. Yes.
Or
Yes.
This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 8:51. 3.
Sarcasm.